All right, this video, how to buy a car. So, what do you need to know before you buy your first car? You want to make sure that you do your research. You can go on kellybluebook.com, or I think it's called NADA, and you can look up the car that you want. You can see how many miles it should have. Go online, look and research it. The amount of mileage that's on the car is going to be related to the actual value of the car, because some cars are good for 300,000 miles, rarely, like super rarely. Let's be more conservative. Some cars are good for 200, 250,000 miles. You get a Toyota Camry, those things, they run forever. If you're going to be purchasing a Hyundai Tiburon, or if you're going to be purchasing a Dodge, then those cars specifically have certain issues that are related to them. They tout the Mopart's got a Hemi in it, but they're not necessarily known for making good transmissions. So if a car that you're thinking about getting has issues, major engine issues, then you want to avoid that car. If it has transmission issues, you want to avoid that car. If it has issues with the rear end components, and I mean the actual rear end, there's a gear in the rear end that connects to two shafts that keeps the back wheels turning, and that's where the power actually goes to and gets transferred to the wheels, to the ground. If you have problems with those components on a car, then that's not a car that you want to purchase. You want to go online, do your research, talk to people who you know have this vehicle, the things that they do like about it, that they don't like about it, and then now you have two options. You've narrowed it down. You want to get a Honda Accord, or you know, or Toyota or Nissan before they start putting CVT transmissions in them. And now you have two options. Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to purchase the car, or do you want to finance the car? Financing basically means that you go to the bank, they give you X amount of money to help you towards the purchase of the car, or completely towards the purchase of the car, and you pay them back monthly. Okay, so let's talk about the difference. All right, so purchasing a car, you save up the money. What are the benefits and the impact of purchasing a car? Well, you own it. If the car breaks down, or you have any issues, or you lose your job, or there's an expensive part, or anything like that, it can sit in the yard for as long as it needs to sit in the yard until you can get the repairs done, or you decide to sell it. Um, because it's an asset. So whatever the value of the car is, let's say you have $1,000 in the bank after you left in the bank after you've purchased the car, and the car is worth five. You bought it for $5,000, but it's worth $6,000. Well, guess what? You've got $7,000 in assets, because at any time you could sell that car and make $1,000 profit. It's worth 6,000, plus you have 1,000 in the bank, and so the car was actually a wise purchase for you. Sometimes the car is worth exactly what you paid for it, which is ideally, what should happen. And then also, the cost associated with maintaining the car is actually cheaper, because you can just get liability insurance instead of keeping full coverage. Sometimes you may find yourself in a spot, or you may have a vehicle whose value doesn't warrant you paying an extra $50 or $100 a month on car insurance to have full coverage on the vehicle. All right. And like I said, at any point you want to sell it, you can. Now, financing. Financing is an issue. It comes with its own issues. If you finance the car, then the car is a liability. If at any time something goes wrong with the car, then it isn't yours. So you got to do what you have to do to make sure you keep it on the road, make sure that you keep it in functional order, and that you make that car payment. Because if you don't make the car payment, the actual owner, who is the lien holder, uh, which is usually a bank, or the dealership's bank, can come and take the car because you missed a payment or three, you know. So with that being said, you want to make sure that you get a car that's not too much car for you. Make sure you get a car that it makes sense for you to have. If you making $20,000 a year, then you shouldn't be driving a $40,000 a year car. If you're making $20,000 a year at the most, you should be driving a car that's valued at about $10,000. All right. Now, as far as financing goes, you want to make sure that you get the best rate possible. When you walk in there, first of all, you want to make sure you secure your own financing. So you want to go to your bank. You don't want to go to the dealership's bank, because your bank may say, okay, you've had an account here for X amount of time, especially if you bank at a federal credit union, because if you bank at a federal credit union, the people who are members of the bank, they actually get the best. They get the best rate, and because you have your money in the bank, you're partial owner. That's what a federal credit union is. If you bank at somewhere like Bank of America, then Bank of America may say, hey, you have to get a minimum of $10,000 for the purchase of a car, which is automatically going to put you at the top of where you plan on how much money you plan on dispensing for using for a car. That's also going to increase the monthly amount that you have to pay back. So there are different ways to secure your own financing, but I suggest you do go to your own bank. What happens when you go to the dealership takes that as an opportunity to get even more money out of you. They say, well, we can put you in this $10,000 car, but they're going to hit you with this interest rate that's going to be, way higher than what you would pay if you went to your own bank. And then you end up having to pay a monthly amount that is going to subtract from money that you could be using for savings, money you could be using for time with your friends and your family, or it may be so excessive that it requires you to work extra hours at your job until you can find a way to lower your other costs to kind of offset the cost of that vehicle. So what you want to do, if that is the case, is you want to come with a very large down payment. So if the car is $10,000 and you don't want to have a high car payment, then you want to make sure that you put down a $3,000-$4,000 down payment. Otherwise, think of a car that may be more in your scope. In addition to that, you want to make sure that you get gap insurance. Whenever you finance a vehicle, you want to make sure you have gap insurance. What gap insurance is this insurance that will cover the difference between how much you owe on the car and what's left over, and what you've already paid. So let's say you just got the car, you've had it a month, or you've just had it a year, and you still owe $7,000 on the car, and the car is now decreased in value because you've been driving it around. So now the value of the car is only $3,000. If you have full coverage, the full coverage insurance is only going to pay you that $3,000 because that's what the Kelley Blue Book value or the NADA value of the car is. So now you're left being responsible for $4,000 for a vehicle that you no longer have and get to use to get you from point A to point B. In addition to that, now you're also out of vehicle. So gap insurance is a insurance that will pay that difference between what the insurance company paid, that $3,000 that was the actual value of the car, and the $4,000, which is the difference between what you actually financed to get the vehicle. One of the other things that you want to do is you want to make sure that you keep good credit. I know that when you're young, a lot of times you may not have the best credit, or if you've just had some bad luck or made some bad decisions, then your credit score may be poor, and you could be victim to predatory lending. You want to be smart. You want to know what the value of this car is supposed to be. You want to make sure that you go in there and you get the car for what it is, preferably less, or extremely close to it. Sometimes that you don't have good credit, or you have a very limited credit history, and if you can't find anyone who will co-sign for you, such as a parent or someone who has a higher credit score than yours, whose credit score you can basically kind of borrow so that you get a lower interest rate. You want to at least know what is a good interest rate. I've gotten vehicles for 2% interest because I keep a close eye on my credit, and I bank at a federal credit union, and even if I open up a bank account somewhere else, and I have before, I always keep it at least one account open at a federal credit union. They just give you better rates. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. If you guys have any more questions. Oh, and of course, never buy any used vehicle without getting it checked out by a mechanic. When you go, make sure you take a mechanic with you, or you meet them somewhere where you can have the car inspected by a mechanic that is someone that you trust, someone that they did not choose. And that way, the car hasn't been, they haven't slid them some money to kind of hide or not mention some of the issues that are associated with the car. If you have any more questions, then leave me a question right down in the comments section below. Thank you.